It's make or break time for KU. They want to be a bowl team. They want to accomplish big things. You got to win a game like this at UCF.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day, and thank you to the everydayers catching each and every episode of the show. We are free and available anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. And on today's edition, we get to our full preview of Kansas versus UCF, why this one is so important for Kansas if they want to make it into a bowl game. We get to the injury news from the two teams, the UCF scouting report, and our matchups that will determine who comes out on top in this road game for KU. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. So Kansas takes on UCF Saturday night game. This is a tough place to play. It's going to be, rocking on a Saturday night as well. And I think the biggest storyline into all this for me, for KU, is just like, what is this Kansas team? Because you can look at both losses and say, hey, Missouri's a good team. Lost that game on the road. You had a lead late in the fourth quarter. You led late in the fourth quarter against Cincinnati. Maybe Cincinnati ends up being an 8 or 9 win team. Who knows? And then it's not the big deal. You can also look at it and look at some of the defensive issues and look at the difficult part of the schedule coming up for KU, where you still have to play at Texas Tech. You still have to play at Arizona. You all of a sudden has, more life than last year. You still have to play at Utah at home. You still have to play at Iowa State. You still have K-State, who's beaten you 16 straight times. The schedule does not get much easier for KU. And as you look at that schedule, the most gimme game, the game that you should win the most, is the home game against Oklahoma State. Even then, there's going to be some revenge game factor for Oklahoma State, but that's neither here nor there. That would get you to 4 wins. Where are you finding the other two to win, to go bowling? Could you beat K-State? Could you beat, Utah on senior day? Like, of course, you could win all these different games, but the path to getting to bowl eligibility gets a lot more difficult if you don't win this game, not just from a standpoint of the math to get there, but also from a standpoint of, if you lose this game, it's probably indicative that maybe you're not on that plane. And I think this is a talented team that should be talented enough to go to a bowl game. I thought they should have last year, though, too, and they didn't. So even though I think they're talented enough, even though I think they're good enough to do it, you do have to actually come through with the results. And that's where this game becomes important. It's projected to be a close game by FanDuel, and we know KU has struggled in close games. So, can you get over the hump in this one at UCF? And what defense are we going to see in the process for KU? Are we going to see the defense that looked awesome against West Virginia and, Wagner, but still Wagner? Fresno State, is it going to be one of those defenses? Or is it going to be the defense that couldn't get off the field on 3rd and 4th down, that couldn't cover against Missouri and Cincinnati last week? What are we going to see from the KU defense that could determine if they win this game? That's going to determine how they fare for really the rest of the season if you're KU. Now, obviously, one of the key mentioned storylines of this one too will be Bangally Kamara's out for the first half. Targeting call he got in the second half against Cincinnati, he's out for the first half of this one, and that's super important because he's one of your best players, he's one of your best defensive players, but also UCF is going to test those linebackers with their really strong running game and really strong running backs. And he would be somebody who, as an athletic linebacker, is really going to help you in a game against a team that has a bunch of athletes. And I think Kansas was still having troubles when Bangally Kamara was in the game last week against Cincinnati, but it still makes it harder when he's not in the game. And who knows? For all we know, if Bangally Kamara's in for the rest of the game, Kansas ends up winning that game. Maybe they do get, maybe, I don't know, maybe what if it's Bangally Kamara who would have had the interception opportunity on 3rd and 10? And what if he comes up with it? We'll never know, right? But we do know he's out for at least one half. Now, as far as the other notices of injury for KU, long list of players who are out. Daniel Hishaw is out for this one as of the report that came out on Wednesday night. And so that's unfortunate there. That just means, more role for Le'Shawn Williams, which has been the case here of late anyway. But Hishaw had a big game against UCF the last time these two teams met in 2023, so he won't be there. Laquan Robinson is new to this. Now, he hasn't been playing a ton. Dylan Brooks, same. Deshaun Hanukkah, that one, unfortunate. He got hurt in the early going of the Cincinnati game, so that just means you're counting more on guys like Bowden Groen and Carson Brune, and Hanukkah has had a solid start to the season. So KU without their starting tight end, they're without their starting running back, they're without Mason Ellis, who is their starting basically third safety Hawk player because they play this 4-2-5. So you're without a bunch of starters there. And then the rest of the guys are guys that I don't know that they would have hit the field anyway. And then you're without Bangally Kamara for the first half. So that is a tough thing to deal with if you're Kansas, right? In a game that is this important to show what you can do and reach your goals of what you want to do, you are now basically without 4 of your starters for the first half. That's brutal if you're KU. Now, Leif Marjan's questionable too, and that's your kicker. Like, he just popped up on there. Like, that's not great. Good news, I guess, Saeed Gibbs is probable because you're already feel like you've given up enough in the secondary. The last thing you want to see is the secondary struggling and they're injured. But I guess you kind of already have that with Mason Ellis. So not a great injury report for KU coming into this one against UCF. Now you may be wondering, okay, who are some of these UCF players that are on their injury report? Is there anybody of note? Well, so on the offensive side of the ball, Caden Peening, you see that he's listed out as a tight end. He's only registered 28 snaps so far this season, so that's not one necessarily that's like a huge deal. Dylan Wade has registered 101 snaps. That is somebody who is playing, a good amount of time for UCF, and him being as questionable. He's been fine so far, hasn't been too great in run blocking, but that could be one to kind of keep an eye on there. And the Ja'Curry Brown is kind of the big one. But as you look at Ja'Curry Brown, who's a quarterback, and again, he's on the questionable side here. Brown is more of their running quarter. I mean, their quarterbacks can all run, but Brown is maybe the best runner of the three. Feels like Tayven Jackson's maybe the best mix of everything, and then Fancher maybe is more of just the passer. I don't know. But you look at it, and the fact that Brown is on there, but Jackson is not at all, tells me, and during our crossover episode yesterday with Mike, he was like, yeah, I'm expecting, Tayven Jackson to play. The question becomes, he's playing through an injury, which I would have thought he would have at least be, I guess, probable on this list. But that certainly makes you think that he's feeling okay, and that's your kind of expectation of who the quarterback is going to be. Now, as far as some of the injured guys or availability lists on the defensive side, there is a big name on there for UCF. Horace Lockett is a defensive tackle with 113 snaps this year and a 77.5 PFF grade, including 75 in run defense and a 75 in pass rush. He's got 4 pressures so far this season. He's out. So that is something where, as KU looks to maybe establish the run, and one possible thing that you might try to do to help out your defense is sustain longer drives, have more effectiveness running the ball. I look at a guy like Lockett being out, especially with those 2 good defensive ends for UCF, to where, maybe you can just have them running down the field, pass rushing, and you can kind of go at them in a way, as I nearly knock my computer off. But that is certainly a big loss for UCF to not have him in this game. As far as Good and Hayward, those are guys with both under 30 snaps so far this season. So those ones not as big. Jaden Williams is another interesting one, though, that he's out, as Williams has 84 snaps this year with a 66 PFF grade. So he's certainly somebody who is contributing for UCF, but again, he's out for the game. So this is actually a pretty brutal injury report when you're looking at both teams. And then you look at the other guys who are questionable on the defensive side for UCF. Kelly Lawson is not off to a great start this season, just a 50 PFF grade, but also he's played 148 snaps. And, maybe part of the reason the PFF grade is so low is because he's playing through an injury. We see that happen a good amount of time, but that would be one where it's like, if he's playing that many snaps and the grade's not very good, what does that mean about the guy behind him, right? And then Isaiah Nixon, 76 snaps this year. He's got a 63 PFF grade. He's on the questionable list. And then Reed would be the last one. He's yet to log a snap so far this season. So kind of an interesting injury report for both teams coming in. Certainly the big injury storylines coming in for UCF were about their quarterbacks, but sounds like Tayven Jackson is going to be a go there. All right, let's get to our UCF scouting report, matchups of the game, and more. This is Locked on Jayhawks. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season's here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And stay tuned for our Friday episode where we're going to do FanDuel Friday. We're going to go over the spread of the upcoming KU UCF game. We're going to go over some player props, maybe build a fun little player parlay, which you can do all that over at FanDuel. Plus, you can get early futures on the college basketball season. Darren Peterson's still going off at plus 850 to win the Wooden Award. Don't tell too many people because we want those odds to stay really good. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started with FanDuel. Today's episode of the show is also brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There's certain businesses that make the neighborhood the neighborhood. These are the places that become an extension of home, whether it's the sports bar dedicated to your team's fan base, the spot with the best wings in town for game day, that beloved local chain that's been rooted in your community for years. These businesses are what bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. I love me some Cajun food, and Terrebonne does it about as good as anybody in Lawrence. And man, they use Square. So I don't know. Seems like it's helping their business. Every time I go in there, now that they're on Mass Street, like feels like, I mean, they were always crowded before too, but like it just feels like it's always like it's filled to the brim because they have great stuff. And they use Square. They're a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square. See you in the neighborhood. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Locked on Jayhawks. You can catch us anywhere you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. Give me a follow on Twitter at DJohnsonRadio or our Locked on account, LO_Jayhawks there. And don't forget, too, you can check out Locked on College Football for your second listen every day. Shoot, Locked on College Basketball as well to get you ready for the upcoming college basketball season. I know we're in October. It's going to be here before we know it. UCF comes into this one 3-1 on the season. They beat Jacksonville State. Now, okay, as we go through the schedule here, this is another one of those teams where, and to be clear, this doesn't mean they're bad because we did this with Cincinnati too. We came into the Cincinnati game and said, they're 2-1, but it's like, who have they played? They lost to Nebraska. That was their best game, but they showed some weaknesses, but it was also a close loss. And then I was like, they only beat Bowling Green by 14. They beat a really bad FCS team. Like, how good just actually is Cincinnati? We didn't know. And I feel that way about UCF. Jacksonville State, they only beat 17-10, and Jacksonville State's only 2-3. They dominated North Carolina A&T, who's a 1-4 FCS team, 68-7. And then they crushed North Carolina, which is a Power 4 team, but also North Carolina's looked really bad. They had a blowout loss to TCU. Their wins are against Charlotte and Richmond. And last week in their, I guess, realist game, so to speak, they lost by 14 to K-State, which, losing by 14 to K-State, who's a team that, could turn it around, and maybe that was the start of the turnaround at any point in time. But it doesn't sound that bad, but it was 31-10 at one point late in that game. So, like, how good is this UCF team is a question that I don't really have the answer to. They could win this game and they could win 6 or 7 games this year. They could also lose this game and finish as a 4-win team. I have no idea. But it definitely becomes more difficult to play them because you're playing them on the road. Now, both teams are obviously coming off a loss. So you would imagine both teams should have, kind of full attention here. The coach is Scott Frost, making his triumphant return. That actually lost to K-State, snapped a 16-game winning streak for him. He obviously had great success at UCF, 6-7 in year 1, 13-0 in year 2, then 16-31 in Nebraska. By the way, already going to get ahead of this. Next year in every preseason magazine, they're going to bring up, year 2 at UCF, his first time around, they went 13-0. So watch out. That is 100% going to happen. Now, Scott Frost had a lot of success as a player against Kansas when he was at Nebraska, but we don't need to talk about that. When you look at UCF, most of those preseason magazines and publications and estimations picked them in the bottom half, near the bottom, kind of collectively in the Big 12 leading into this season. You look at it now, and ESPN FPI has them at 49th in the country, so it doesn't seem like that, I don't know. Like Kansas is 31st, so there's not like a wide margin between these. UCF is also 43rd on ESPN SP+. They have the number 58 offense, number 34 defense there. Kansas in that metric is 33rd, so that's only 10 spots apart, featuring the number 15 offense and number 58 defense. When you look at the personnel for UCF, really good speed at skill positions. They've got some good size on the outside at receiver. it's not quite, I would say, Missouri from a skill position perspective, but I actually think skill position wise, it's better than Cincinnati. Now, I don't think the quarterback's as good as Cincinnati. The offensive line's not as good as Cincinnati, but I think skill players wise, this will be the best team you've played outside of Missouri from that perspective. Miles Montgomery, 51 carries, 268 yards, really good running back. Jaden Nixon's averaging 14 yards per carry, 16 carries, 226. Very boom or bust. It's either going to be like a 0-yard carry or it's going to be like 50. Then they've got 3 receivers over 15 yards per catch, so they can hit big plays. Their leading receiver actually isn't one of those. Dwayne Thomas, 16 catches for 203 yards, their most consistent target, but they've got guys they can, get the ball to all around the field. And that's a little worrisome for KU, who to this point, Jalen Todd's been solid as a corner for KU, but outside of that, they've shown certainly some deficiencies in the secondary in coverage. Now I mentioned the offensive line. You look at the offensive line grades, they are 60th in pass block grade on Pro Football Focus, 82nd in run block grade. They've been better on the left side than the right side so far this season, but that has not been an area. They don't rank well in like offensive line run push and some of those different numbers. They're not getting sacked like a ton. It's a little bit more than Kansas, but it's definitely not a unit that you would call the strength. Defensively, they've been strong in pass rush and coverage. I think you look at it as they have a really strong defensive line and one that could wreck a game, one that can certainly cause a lot of pressure and create chaos on your passing game. And then you look at the special teams side, they are 7 of 8 on field goals. They have a kick return for a touchdown this year. And that becomes, even more of an interesting matchup if Leif Marjan truly is out or, is playing through an injury in this one. The quarterback position for them, it's been different guys. So Cam Fancher was the original starter, gets hurt in the opener. Then it goes to Tayven Jackson. And last week, both Jackson and one of the backups gets hurt. Well, it sounds like Jackson's going to be back. Wasn't on the injury report. He was a former transfer from Tennessee and then Indiana. So far this year, 65% completion rate, 8 yards per attempt. Both those are solid. 3 touchdowns and 1 interception, though in his career, just 9-7 TD to interception ratio. Mentioned he's been sacked a little more than Kansas. It's 6 times compared to 4 times for Jalen Daniels, and that's also with Jalen throwing the ball 26 more times. But he's also got 75 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. So I wouldn't call him he's not Michael Vick running the football, but he's certainly not a statue either. And then the all-encompassing QBR, it has him at 59.8, which puts him 65th nationally. So he's about a nationally average quarterback in college football. I think there's 136 teams now, so that would mean 68 would be dead average, right? Now, if we go back to the schedule thing, his toughest game, Kansas State, it was only a 17 QBR. So, what does that exactly mean? Was it just a bad game? Or is it indicative that in the bigger games, he's going to struggle more? I guess we're going to find out. One thing that's interesting, though, is, and this is especially true, coming off the Cincinnati game, in which Kansas played a quarterback in Brendan Sorsby at Cincinnati, who was really good throwing over the middle of the field. Cincinnati was 14 of 16 over the middle of the field against Kansas last Saturday, is that Tayven Jackson has actually struggled over the middle of the field beyond 10 yards, but he's really good below 10 yards. So on the season, Tayven Jackson is only 5 of 17 for 95 yards over the middle of the field, but beyond 10 yards. So 10 plus yards down the field. But when he's throwing over the middle of the field behind the line of scrimmage up to the 10 yards, he is 37 of 43, very high completion percentage there, 343 yards on the season. That means he's going to continue to test the linebackers and safeties for KU. The bad news, obviously, the Bangally Kamara stuff. The better news, though, is that it's not happening as much downfield as the Cincinnati attack, but UCF's going to see some of that stuff on tape and probably try to exploit it a little bit more. Should also mention that under pressure, there's obviously been a big difference, as most quarterbacks are worse when they're under pressure. But again, it's hard to take too much from some of those games. And here's something else that's interesting. He's done well against the blitz, 9.6 yards per attempt this year for Tayven Jackson against the blitz. So can you get pressure without blitzing? But more on that later. One other thing that I'll add, and that's very different than Cincinnati, and I think this is a good thing for KU. Cincinnati was a much better, at least on paper, play action team than UCF in the passing game. Right now this season, UCF is averaging over 4 yards per attempt worse than Cincinnati off of play action. And I think that really hurt Kansas in the game. All right, happy stats and sad stats. 4 happy stats for UCF. They're third in the Big 12 in yards per play and rush yards per play. So they've been just a very solid offense so far. Now, that's not schedule adjusted, but they've played the schedule in front of them and they've done well offensively. They're 96th percentile in offensive explosive play rate, including 99th percentile for running explosive plays. They can hit big plays, including with the running game, which makes sense with their speed. 95th percentile in early downs EPA per play defensively, meaning they're doing a really good job on first and second down on the defensive side of the ball. And then 95th percentile in EPA per play against the pass defensively, meaning that they're doing a really good job against the pass. Might be more onus on the KU running game to get going to try to win this game. 4 sad stats, though, for UCF. According to ESPN FPI, UCF has played the number 106 schedule in the country. So that kind of backs up what we're talking about, where it's like some of these raw stats look good, but what do they actually mean in context against conference foes, better teams? They're 13th in the Big 12 in yards per carry allowed. So even though the pass defense has been good, they have shown some holes in the run defense game, which was exploited by Kansas State. If Kansas can do that, you keep the defense off the field a little bit more. They are 11th percentile. You want to be the higher numbers there. 11th percentile means 89% of college football at the D1 level is better than you in this, and that would be offensive line rush yards per game on paper. So they are not getting much offensive line run push. Most of their big games from the running game is coming from the running backs making guys miss and making explosive plays. And then they're 9th percentile in preventing explosive running play rate. They're much better versus the pass in preventing explosive plays, but obviously when the yard per carry is high against them defensively, against the run, a big reason why is they're giving up a lot of explosive plays. But what's interesting there, KU hasn't gotten a ton of explosive plays in the running game. Maybe this is a game where that can happen. They've actually been okay at moving the ball here and there, but if they can hit some more explosives, then it becomes a much more effective running game for KU. All right, let's finish up with our matchups of the game. This episode of the show is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how we craft every model. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover, SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players who sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. College football is back, and I don't know how you couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, energy in the stands, nothing like it. But sometimes getting tickets can be stressful. It can be more of a battle than the game itself because of hidden fees, price jumps at checkouts, just knowing, am I going to get the tickets? Am I going to get the tickets? That's why I use Game Time. It's the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. I'll be honest, if I was going out to this game right now and having to get tickets, I wouldn't be stressed at all, even though we're getting closer to the game, because I got my trusty pal Game Time to help me out with that. You can even get tickets like an hour before the game. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Locked on Jayhawks. We'll have our KU keys to taking down UCF on tomorrow's episode. All right, matchups of the game. First down, establishing the run and hitting or limiting explosive running plays. UCF hasn't been too hot against the run. They also give a bunch of explosives here. And so when you look at that, that's something that KU, you would hope, can get more explosives in the running game than they're getting this season. Kansas, meanwhile, they're in just the 15th percentile for explosive run play rate offensively. So this is an opportunity too, and you kind of have to boost it. Now, KU has actually been strong against the run defensively, even though the defense has, had their shortcomings in a couple of the games so far this season. You look at success rate against the run, Kansas ranks 39th in the country. You look at EPA per play against the run, Kansas in the 83rd percentile there. But UCF is really strong running on their side of the ball offensively. Plus, one thing that KU might try to do and I don't even think this is just like a this game thing, just kind of moving forward to lessen some of the defensive issues, is more ball control, right? When you're looking at Kansas and you're saying, hey, if you're having some defensive issues, hold on to the ball a little bit longer, keep that defense arrested, keep it off the field, and maybe try to play a little bit more, possession football. That wouldn't shock me. Second down, get pressure without blitzing. Tayven Jackson actually has a higher completion percentage and averages over 2 more yards per attempt this year when he's blitzed compared to when he's not. But his completion percentage splatters when he's under pressure compared to, it's like 20 percentage points worse when he's under pressure versus when he's not. So can you find a way to get pressure without blitzing? Can your defensive line win with 3 or 4? Maybe sometimes even 5 if you have to, but against their O-line, that's not necessarily a strength. Can you find a way to win that way, right? Because if not, your shaky secondary is going to have problems again. And with Mason Ellis, one of your starting safeties, out, in addition to the Bangally Kamara stuff, like, you need as many guys back there in coverage as possible. So the good news is KU does have obviously some talent on the defensive line. That may be the best position group for KU on the defensive side of the football. Go take advantage in this game against, you didn't have the best game against Cincinnati, even though the pressure numbers looked really good. It needs to be better if KU wants to take down UCF. Third down is third downs. Kansas is only 14th in the Big 12 on third downs. They're 31% there. Add to it, we mentioned the happy stat earlier. UCF is in the 95th percentile defensively in EPA per play on early downs. That means that they're forcing a lot of teams into third and longs. You want to win on the road in a tough environment, you're going to have to convert third downs. And if you're in third and long all day long and they're just screaming at you in a loud environment, good luck trying to win a game like that. And so Kansas, who has been one of the best offenses on third down in the Big 12 the last 3 years before this year, can you start to get that going in this game? Now, on the flip side, what's been the thing that's constantly plagued the KU defense over and over again? It's making stops on late downs. So enter UCF, who is just 31st percentile in early downs EPA per play. So they're actually getting themselves into some third and longs, but they are 91st percentile in late downs EPA per play, meaning UCF fits right into the billing of what the KU defense is allowed. KU's defense has been pretty good on first and second down. They haven't been very good on third and fourth downs. That's been exactly what the UCF offense is. So I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. I don't know if that's like a bad thing because it's like, oh, okay, they're like, is it a good thing because you're going to set them up in even worse third down situations? I don't know. That'll be very interesting. Fourth down is finishing in the red zone. Kansas is dead last, 16th in the Big 12 in percentage of red zone trips that lead to points at just 74%. UCF, meanwhile, they're top 5 as they're finishing their drives. You think back last week, the field goal drives that you did have. Could you have punched it in one more time in a touchdown and, all of a sudden you're forcing, I guess, Cincinnati to go for 2 at the end there. And on the flip side, Kansas is just one of 4 teams in the Big 12 who has given up scores on every red zone trip they've allowed defensively. So this isn't just about, hey, the KU offense has struggled in the red zone and UCF's offense has not. It's also that the KU defense has struggled in the red zone. Again, there's only 4 teams in the Big 12 right now who have given up a score on every red zone trip. Kansas is one of those 4. UCF, they're only giving up scores on 70% of their red zone trip, not just touchdowns, any score. So that's something red zone offense, defense has to be better in this game for KU. And on paper, those are both UCF advantages. But if Kansas can change that or find kind of an evening there, then maybe you turn a strength for them on paper into kind of a neutral and you can win in some other ways. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. We'll see you next time for another edition of LOJ.